Welcome to the meeting of the Forever Sioux Commission of April 29th. First item on the agenda is to read the open meeting law. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Terry, would you do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Yickton.
Present.
Commissioner Souza.
Present.
President Almeida.
Present.
Commissioner Grenier.
Present.
Okay, I think we all have our agendas in front of us, along with our packet. First item is citizen input. Is there any citizen input?
I think everyone's here for the MVP presentation.
Is that right? Okay. Take us to item number 2, minutes of the previous meeting held on February 12, 2019. I believe in our packets we had those minutes. If you haven't had the opportunity to read through them, please do so. If you have any questions or changes you wish to make, please bring it up. If not, I'll obtain a motion to accept the minutes of the previous meeting held on February 12th.
Make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that takes us to item number 3, the municipal vulnerability preparedness presentation.
So as most of the committee knows, they were present at the preparedness study. We did a municipal vulnerability preparedness workshop. So this was a grant that we were provided through the state to be able to do this workshop. This went through and it identifies a bunch of vulnerabilities, natural hazards that have issues within the community. We went through the workshop with a bunch of groups, businesses that are in the community, local people that are in the community, city employees that are very familiar with the community and also live in the community. So this is the outcome of that workshop. This is the first of 4 listening sessions that we're going to be having. So we're going to have this one here for the Sewer Commission as well as the audience, and I thank everybody. Most of you attended the workshop, and I thank everybody for attending the workshop, and thank you very much for coming tonight. We'll also be doing this at 3 neighborhood groups, 3 to 4 neighborhood group associations meetings, and we'll have Portuguese translation available at those neighborhood group meetings in case there's any assistance needed. So Mary McCran is with Woodward and Curran, and if you'd like to turn it over to her.
Sure. Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you, Terry, again for having me this evening, and thank you very much for everyone for coming, especially the folks that were at the workshop. It was an 8-hour workshop, so I appreciate you also coming tonight. Again, my name is Mary McCran, and I'm a planner at Woodward and Curran, and we've been working closely with the City of Fall River to complete your municipal vulnerability preparedness planning process. I'll get into a little bit more about what that is for folks who were not at the workshop. And basically at the end of all this will be a summary of findings or a written report that goes to the state, and upon submittal and certification from the state, Fall River will become a municipal vulnerability preparedness certified community. And what that does is it unlocks a funding source for different types of grant funding that you currently can't apply for because this process hasn't been completed. So by doing all this work, it unlocks a grant funding source that Fall River will then be eligible for. It's heavily supported by the governor, and I'll get into that a little bit more as well. So if you do have questions as we go along, please let me know. I anticipate I'm going to try to keep it to 20 minutes. Terry, if you want to help me, I don't have a watch on, but that would be great.
Keep you moving.
Okay, thank you, because I know you have a lot of other agenda items this evening, but this is a very important component for what Fall River can use in the future for resiliency planning, hazard mitigation planning, and it does tie to your hazard mitigation plan, and I'll point that out how we did that. So, So our agenda for tonight, I'm just going to do a quick overview of the Community Resiliency Building Workshop, and it's just a question and answer. I do have some note cards in my bag. If anyone would prefer to write something down on a note card and submit it to me after the meeting, that's fine too. If you feel more comfortable doing that, just let me know. I'm going to move it right along into some background information. So even before the Community Resiliency Building Workshop, in 2016, Governor Baker signed an executive order instructing state government to provide cities and towns with the resources that they need to complete climate change vulnerability assessments and other resiliency planning initiatives. So this was back in 2016. As a direct result of this, and through some other initiatives of the state, Governor Baker then opened up, it's called Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Planning and Action Grant Program and Planning Process, right? So in 2018, Governor Baker also signed legislation allocating approximately $2.4 billion for climate change adaptation, environmental protection, and other community investments. So not just the MVP program, but programs like the Complete Streets program, for example. The money is to be allocated for capital investments. It's for municipalities to determine what they need the funding for and allow you the opportunity to apply for it. You can apply for it through the MVP program, for example, if you've planned for it, and that's what we're doing. We're planning for how Fall River would like to prioritize things that they need to do, right? Protecting environmental resources, improving your recreational opportunities. The governor has earmarked this $2.4 billion, or he's trying to pass legislation to allocate this money for the cities and towns of the Commonwealth. Again, it's for investments at the state level and the local level, and it also is a follow-on to other elements of Executive Order 569. So the program and the process that you've participated in really ties up nicely to the state level, and it's a really important piece, again, for Fall River as you move forward with needing different types of grant funding for resiliency and climate change related projects. Just some of the pictures, I don't need to show you this, you guys probably already know all this, but just some of the impacts that the city has seen over the past few years in terms of flooding in particular. These are some of the things that we talked a lot about at the workshop. Where is the city flooding? Why is it flooding? What do we need to do about it? Things like that. So we talked about that at length. So the whole purpose of the program and the workshop that we did was to take a look really closely at 4 key objectives. So defining extreme weather and natural and climate related hazard events. That ties into your hazard mitigation plan, and we leveraged the information from that hazard mitigation plan so that the groups at the workshop could really kind of reconsider all of that and figure out what do they think are the top hazards Fall River should worry about. At the workshop, we looked at vulnerabilities and strengths of the city in the categories of infrastructure, societal, and environment. So we identified where are we vulnerable, what are our strengths. Based on all of this information, we developed priority actions for Fall River to take. And then we identified opportunities where we can take action to reduce risk, but also build resilience. So we looked at everything as a whole, we developed a bunch of priority actions, and then we tried to figure out, okay, where are we gonna reduce our risk and become a more resilient city based on what we put together, and I will get into those details. The overall principles of this process are that the workshop be a community-led process. John and Paul have been doing a tremendous job reaching out to the community, getting attendees at the workshop. I think we had about 35 or 40 folks who committed to attending for 8 hours to go through this whole entire process, so it was a great turnout. Again, some of the folks are here tonight who participated in that workshop. The process should be accessible to everyone. It should utilize partnerships and leverage existing efforts. So again, we leveraged that hazard mitigation plan. We had attendees from the college that were there all day that participated. So that nice partnership with some business owners that were there all day. That was a nice partnership. So it was residents, business owners, city staff, and other interested parties. We also had some folks from the Fall River Tree Committee who were there the entire day. And so it was nice to kind of make those connections and figure out how we could continue to leverage those partnerships. Mainstreaming the conversation about climate change. Some of the other MVP principles are seeing communities as the local innovators, but then also using this process to frame the statewide efforts that are going on. So the state just completed a statewide hazard mitigation plan and climate adaptation plan moving forward. When your hazard mitigation plan gets updated again, for example, you need to be consistent with what the state is doing. So you're kind of lining yourself up to do a nice job showing some consistency with what the state is doing by leveraging that hazard mitigation plan, participating in this process. So when you guys go to do that again, you'll be able to show those connections. All this ties into something that I already mentioned, which is the MVP grant program. So I'm wrapping up the planning process with this meeting and the 3 meetings with the neighborhood groups with Paul and John. After that, Fall River will be eligible to apply for grant money and potential other grant funding from other programs. So the MVP program, what I'm seeing happen right now is if you're an MVP certified community and you want to apply to CZM, for example, for a resiliency grant or a stormwater grant, something like that, they're giving bonus points to communities that are MVP certified. So just by completing this process, in some of the other states' grant programs, they're giving extra points if you're an MVP certified community. So you're setting yourself up nicely for other things. So all of this is leading to Fall River applying for additional grant funding from other programs. So there was currently an MVP Action Grant Round that closed. I think that program had $5 million in it. It was open to any certified MVP community. Fall River couldn't particularly apply for the April round because we're in the planning process, but once this is complete and if we can get it done and accepted, you may be able to apply for the June round. Communities can apply for up to $2 million. As of the last grant round, that might change the cap at what you can apply for. They really want to see projects that propose or incorporate nature-based solutions or green infrastructure. They're going to give higher scores to those, so we'll keep that in mind. And I wanted to just point out for folks what some of the eligible projects are. So if you need to do a more detailed vulnerability or risk assessment, you want to do some education in your community, if you want to update your regulations, your bylaws, redesign and retrofit projects, nature-based storm damage protection, nature-based infrastructure, ecological restoration, those types of things. I know Fall River has a tremendous amount of infrastructure needs, but to the extent that we can start tying those even more towards a green infrastructure or have a nature-based solution component to that project, could push it into eligibility.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How many communities right now are certified?
You're wonderful. You just teed that up perfectly for
There you
me.
go.
That was perfect. So I thought you might be
ESP.
interested. I thought you might be interested in what other communities are in the MVP program. That's really funny that you just asked that. So the dark blue, they're currently designated an MVP community, so they can apply to that grant program. The light blue is the fiscal year 2018-2019 participants. So you'll see that Fall River is that light blue color because you're doing the planning process right now. And then if it has a hash in it, it just means that the two communities have gotten together to do the workshop together. So you can see kind of how things are stacking up right now. So.
And there's a pot of $2 million for all of that?
The last grant round had $5 million for the April round. They opened up a second grant round with another $5 million in it. I don't know how much money the next grant round is going to have. It could have more, it could have less, I don't know. Certainly it's advantageous to get in the program early, so you're not competing with 351 towns and cities throughout the Commonwealth, right? The pot's smaller right now. But they are awarding up to $2 million with the discretion to award more money depending on the project. Yes.
What is Alcoa now? Where are we located?
Yep, so you're the light blue down here.
Okay.
Yep,
Yes,
right there.
that's fine.
And you're the light blue, and that means you're in the planning process right now. And then, go ahead.
What's the time frame to be accepted?
This process has to be complete, the report done, all the workshops done by June 30th. So if we.
Of this year?
Yes, yep. So, go ahead.
Okay.
If we can get that completed, I don't know when the actual grant round is gonna be due this spring, maybe June, maybe July. If we can get the plan done and completed, you could potentially apply for the June round for some of the projects that we're listing as priorities.
What's the history of these points that you talk about?
Oh, of the extra points for extra, I don't have a lot of details on that. So I just know that certain state agencies are giving extra points or looking more favorably on communities who are MVP certified. And that I know the CZM programs, for example, CZM, SRF, maybe you're getting an extra 10 points in your applications just by being a certified community.
Right, so as they evaluate the application that we submit, they go through and the people evaluating that application rank them. They apply points to all the different criteria that you meet even in the application. So this it has been advertised to be able to give us additional points on those applications.
And so we've always
Which
done
is
pretty
helpful.
well on our SRF grants, but there have
Yes.
been times we'll be right on the borderline, and having an extra 10 points can be a big help.
So you think those points would be reflective in other applications for other things?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
That'd be good.
Yep, so that's the status right now, so I anticipate Fall River being a dark blue after June 30th, completing the planning process. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. So moving on, that was just a little bit of background, but I wanted to start talking a little bit about the workshop results. So what did we come up with at the workshop? The first thing I did that evening or that afternoon, and Paul did and John did, was thank everybody for coming. Again, they spent a whole 8 hours of what day was it, a Wednesday with us?
Yes.
Of a Wednesday, right in the middle of the week. So we thanked everybody, and here was our agenda. We did a welcome and overview. We had each person kind of think about and share, what do you personally think are your challenges and goals for the city? We went over some background information. We had Liz McKinley there from Davy Tree to talk about the Fall River municipal tree and management work that she's doing. So a great presentation, a lot of questions about that. We talked about the natural hazards impacting your city so that people could think about, okay, I know what they are. What do I think we want to prioritize and talk about today? We then talked about the community vulnerabilities and strengths, again, in the categories of infrastructure, societal, and environment. Mr. Carey did a very nice presentation with his boss, Mr. Smith, about Liberty Utilities and their role in the city, and what all of that means. And based on all of this background information, we then moved forward to identify and prioritize community actions. We wrapped up the workshop by prioritizing using dots. So of the top actions from each table, we gave everybody dots to spend. What do you think is most important? And that's how we came up with the priorities. And you'll see those. So again, I already went over this really quickly. We're doing 3 more sessions to engage some of the neighborhood groups and offer an opportunity to folks to hear about this in Portuguese. We'll submit all of this work to EEA at the end. It's going to be called the Summary of Findings, and the Summary of Findings is what you're going to use to apply for additional grant funding in the future. So you're going to use the actual report that we come up with. I already talked a little bit about what we did at the workshop. This was just the agenda that's here. We talked a lot about nature-based solutions and how do you leverage that to build resiliency of your city, not just in terms of flooding or coastal surge or hurricane impacts, but even things like urban heat island effect. What role do trees play in the city? Why is that important? How can that help our overall resiliency in the city? So we talked a lot about that. And we also talked about not just increasing local resiliency, but Fall River's role in the region. And what does that mean from a regional perspective? This is just an example of our output. So this is called the overall matrix board. So you'll see at the top, those were the hazards that table 3 focused on: flooding, storms, climate change, and earthquake. On the left-hand side, those were kind of the key things that they thought they were going to talk about regarding infrastructure, societal, and environment. I don't expect you to read all this. I just wanted to show an example of the hard work that the groups did at the workshop. And then they went through a specific process that was designed to get to the end result that we have. Every single community that goes through this process has to fill out these matrix boards. It's required. It's a prescriptive workshop, if you will. So every community has to do the same thing. So these are just a couple quick pictures of the workshop. It's Paul presenting, Liz McKinley, one of the tables working, Bill, here's Marcy. Yep, and so those are the folks kind of working hard during the workshop. That's the dot exercise that we did at the end. And so the groups came up with information based a little bit on the hazard mitigation plan. You may remember us talking about that a few years ago. These were the natural hazards identified in your local hazard mitigation plan that is current and up to date that may be impacting or will impact or continue to impact, Fall River. So we provided that information to attendees. We also talked a lot about known flooding issues, Stafford Square, Duval Street, flooding near the city pier. The Quequechan River is subject to flooding, so we did talk a lot about specific flooding areas, and I know you've done a ton of work on your integrated plan to really figure out and understand where these areas are and what's some of the work that you need to do to improve these conditions. I know there's a lot of other things in your integrated plan, but that's one specific thing, is a lot of these areas are in there. We talked about the hazard mitigation plan actions. So I didn't go through every single one because we incorporated the integrated plan into the hazard mitigation plan. But just for the purposes of this evening, we touched on a lot of these actions during the MVP process. So tree management was in your hazard mitigation plan, generators, shelter plans, pump stations, and the wastewater treatment facility, evaluating that for resiliency. upgrading and cleaning culverts, restoring Mother's Brook, replacing the sewer at Alden Street. So these were all some of the things that we did talk about and incorporate from that planning process to this planning process. It's nice to leverage work that's already been done. So this is what some of the folks said. So as I mentioned, we handed out note cards and we wanted people to reflect really quickly, what do you think some of the challenges are that are facing the city that you're worried about or that you hear about? So certainly a lot of people mentioned aging infrastructure and the cost of projects, protecting the drinking water supply, not only is the water supply for Fall River, but for other surrounding communities. You have a big responsibility there. The city staff having more of a capability to plan for the future, educating the residents, drugs and employment opportunities was mentioned as a thing that's tough for the city, coastal flooding, managing the CSO issues, flooding and flood control, tree management, major fires, and doing a better job leveraging our natural resource areas. So those were some of the challenges identified. And the goals that people had, these are the reasons why people came to participate at the workshop. They wanted to learn about issues that other departments were having. They wanted to learn about the vision and help develop solutions and call attention to issues where there needs to be resolution. Help develop the political will to tackle some of these projects and issues, figure out what projects to focus on, and assist the city with the MVP certification process. Those are some of the goals that people shared with us that day. These were the top natural hazards that were identified by the participants that they were going to focus on. So there were 4 tables. Each table had to come up with their top 4 natural hazards that they were going to talk about for the day. These were all of the hazards that were mentioned, and the ones that were highlighted in the bold color, either 3 or 4 of the tables all mention those. So flooding, severe storms, hurricanes, and earthquakes, 3 out of the 4 or all 4 of those tables mention those. So those were the big ones that people really wanted to focus on. And then the other ones were tackled by 1 or 2 of the tables. So that was the focus of the day. If I'm going too fast, stop me, but I want to stick close to my 20 minutes if I can. So does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, so I'm going to get into what the different tables, again, there were 4 tables. What did they identify based on the hazards that they wanted to focus on? What did they identify for infrastructure vulnerabilities for the city? They said the drainage system, CSOs, the drinking water supply, wastewater treatment, pump stations, roadways, public utilities. Those were all things they mentioned. They also talked about inadequate stormwater capacity. We talked a lot, I think it was maybe table 2 that talked about the reservation road quality, the quality of that road being able to get in and out of there if we need to. We talked a lot about that. The industrial and commercial uses along the shoreline, bridges, and coastal infrastructure. So those are things that we felt like were vulnerabilities for the city. Societal vulnerabilities, Fall River is a multilingual city. The regulations and policies of the city, cultural vulnerabilities. These are the environmental justice areas that have been identified for the city, and so folks talked a lot about environmental justice and what does that mean and how do we incorporate these groups a little bit more. Abandoned property and mills, emergency management, communication. There's health and medical vulnerabilities for a variety of reasons, economic conditions, and then evacuation. If Fall River had to evacuate, what would we do? And environmental vulnerabilities. So I've already mentioned some of them, so just looking at a couple I haven't touched on. Just overall pollution, trees, illegal dumping that came up during a couple groups, hazardous materials, the urban green space, wetlands, and other open space in the city. So folks thought that that was some of the environmental vulnerabilities that they wanted to consider. We talked about infrastructure vulnerabilities, but what are the strengths? So trees were both a vulnerability and a strength, right? We have a lot of them, so there needs to be some more management and maintenance and planting going on, but it's also a strength of the city. The fact that you have a sewer and water system and other utilities, a strength of the city. You're doing a great job trying to maintain everything as much as you can. You do have some dams, seawalls in place that are protecting your city, which is a huge benefit. Some nice commercial transportation routes in and out of the city. a drainage system, and pump stations as well. Those were identified as strengths. So it can be a vulnerability and a strength, right? Societal strengths, again, multilingual. It's a vulnerability, but it's also good. Let's see, certainly your emergency management teams, the shelters that you do have, the fact that you do have an existing communication system in place, those were also identified as strengths. And just really quickly, the environmental strengths. Again, the water supply, a vulnerability, but also a strength. It's good, it provides revenue to the city. The urban green space that you do have, the tree management that you are doing, the open spaces throughout the city that add value to your city, and the overall land use of the watershed was thought to be a very positive thing. So that's a very brief summary of what we touched on at the workshop. And these are the outcomes. So as you remember, we had the 4 groups. Everybody gave me their top 3 of the things that your group talked about today. What are the top 3 things that you think are the most important things for Fall River to focus on? And then they were given 6 dots. So all 12 things were on the board. They were given 6 dots and asked to spend them. And so what we came up with is this. And these are the top priorities that are going to be in the summary of findings that go to the state, unless certainly we get additional feedback and questions from folks. So the drinking water system, we talked a lot about the redundant water main and the need to deal with that situation at the water supply, and also some other drinking water system, improvements that would be nice. But basically, that redundant water main, people really thought we should focus on that. Focus on the sewer and drainage infrastructure, so cleaning, maintaining, replacing, hardening. Really addressing those urban flooding areas. So you do have some areas that are not on a FEMA floodplain map, but they are known and prone to flooding. So why is that? Where are they? And what do we need to do to improve that condition? And then urban trees, supporting the urban tree program and expanding it. So inventorying the trees and managing and maintaining what you have and increasing the tree capacity of the city and the overall canopy. That was number 3. And I didn't add all these in here, but I just wanted to point out what some of the other ones were. So focusing on city regulations and policies, communication, so continued and improved communication to a variety of people about the city's vulnerabilities and opportunities for resiliency. The roadway access at the reservation received some attention at the workshop. And then city street repair, which could be tied into drainage and sewer improvement work, but that came up as its own thing where people wanted to focus. So I think my questions to the group this evening, I tried to get through that fairly quickly, so please stop me if you want to go back and talk about something or have questions. But we want to make sure that people were aware of the workshop, and based on the information we shared this evening, really wanted to ask you, what questions do you have or what comments? Can we clarify anything for you? And based on what we just said, do you think that makes sense? Does that make sense for the city about what your focused priority area should be? Or is something screaming out to you that really we want to make sure we capture? And is there anything else you want to make sure that we capture and take note of for this community resiliency building process?
I have one question.
Yes.
Why is the roadway up in the reservation a stickling point for some reason? What is this? If we improve it, what purpose will it have for this project?
Sure. So the question was the roadway access to the reservation and why improve it and why is it relevant to this? So one of the natural hazards that we talked about.
I will grant you, it is
sure.
atrocious.
Yeah.
It is atrocious.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a good question. So it's my understanding, and Paul and John, correct me, tell me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that for wildfires, that's one of the natural hazards that could impact Fall River. So I probably brushed over that too quickly, but just for access for that reason in particular.
I didn't think of
I
that.
think there were several issues.
Yep.
The potential for wildfires. Our water department maintains the fire lanes, but you've
Right.
seen the roads.
Right.
Getting emergency equipment out there is difficult. We do have a number of subdivisions out in the reservation. For us, at least several hundred people that live out there. So getting emergency equipment in quickly is a concern.
I didn't think of that, John.
And on the societal end, we've created this 15,000 acre bioreserve with conservation restrictions, so the land is saved forever for the public. And we've put signage up where the public can use it for passive recreation, but if your car's gonna get destroyed going out there to get onto the trails, you're not going to attract people. So the fire and the emergency access was the biggest issue. Access for people in and out is an issue, but, and again, if we wanna make bioreserve, you know, the country is talking about use of that type of recreation as being a big draw. The water department is working with a group to get a visitor center somewhere out there. Again, if the roads are in that condition.
Right, I know that.
Thank you, Terry. It's a good question. Thank you for asking it.
I see an area, right now, we have several projects going on in the city where we're dealing with situations that were making us vulnerable to a hazard. Case in point, let's say the Crestbrook project, right? We've relocated swales, put in grass to prevent erosion. We've got the Middle Street project where when it's complete, we're gonna be installing trees going all the way down Middle Street and so forth. How can that tie into something like this in terms of maybe trying to recoup some grant money out of it? Because some of these projects, goes against our debt. And, could this be an avenue, Terry, you think, where maybe we might be able to get some money back?
It has already. So Mary referred to, in addition to the MVP in 2016, the hazard mitigation plan. The Middle Street project, because we applied after having the hazard mitigation plan, we've gotten a grant for about $5 million with the hazardous mitigation plan because of the severe flooding in Middle Street and the potential damage to the hospital. So because of that first plan already, we've got $5 million coming our way. This MVP will be another tool for additional projects that we want to get done. From our department vantage point, a lot of it is flooding. From the water department's vantage point, it's the reservation road. But it gives us more opportunity to work with Marcy, our grant writer, to file those grants, to get extra points, to try to get those grants to do some pieces of some of these projects. So we're in essence following the prescribed process of the state that says you have to do A if you want to get grants B. So it's already been successful in hazard mitigation. That $5 million has paid for the cost of the hazard mitigation plan 10,000 times over already. And we actually got a grant to prepare the hazard mitigation plan. So we're simply following all of these state processes to get us set up to get grants
And leverage.
Yes.
Yeah, you just keep leveraging yourself, right? To build on what you've already done and leverage. And so that's a really good example, Terry. Thank you for mentioning that specific grant. I know a lot of communities are getting, $300,000-$400,000. Like I think the town of Arlington, for example, an urban community, Arlington, right outside of Boston. I think they have a $300,000 or $400,000 grant to study specific impacts of the river, whatever the river is. I'm not going to come up with it right now. It might be the Alewife. Alewife Brook that goes through that particular town and is causing flooding issues, and so they got a grant to specifically do a little bit more of a study on that, for example. So, whether or not it's $1 million, $2 million for a specific infrastructure projects that are going to support your infrastructure projects that you need to get to, but you have to have also other things in place before you can apply for money to get to those projects. You can use this particular program to support your other initiatives that you're trying to get to.
This is the initial stepping stone.
Yes.
Yeah, so for example, one of the first pictures shown was a road that was blown apart. That was Collins Street, right adjacent to Steep Brook in the 2010 storm. So Steep Brook comes down, and as it passes parallel to Collins Street, it goes under the railroad tracks in a restricted culvert. So having that cited both in the hazard mitigation plan and the MVP will give us the opportunity to continue to file grants to expand that culvert that's under underneath the rail tracks. So that's why in these sessions in the workshop, we've been citing and highlighting those specific projects.
Yeah.
As we go forward, and when those projects are all in our integrated plan as well, as we go forward and are ready to move, we're trying to access those grant sources to reduce and minimize the cost to our residents.
That's it.
Okay.
And if you can go and say, yes, we plan for it, we talked about it in our hazard mitigation plan, yes, we plan for it, we talked about it during our MVP process, the state likes to see that.
We're sick of talking about it, we want to fix it.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
But
know, yeah,
the-
we're trying to leverage.
With these extreme storms, there are just so many issues with flooding we have to address.
Absolutely.
I think we've talked about before, in a normal rainstorm, even if we get an inch to 2 inches of rain, 1 to 2 inches over a 12-hour period, there are minor issues but not major issues. It's these big storms that may be impacted by climate change when we get, like in 2012, we got 1.22 inches of rain in 15 minutes. Those were those flooding pictures on Stafford Square. All of that water coming in at once. How do you address and how do you expand for that? So we started in the integrated plan. Correcting Stafford Square is probably about a $51 million project. Again, if we can access hazard mitigation funds, if we have this as a tool, and we can break that project into pieces, the more grants that we can get to keep chipping away at it to get it solved. Because there's only so much we can afford to do in a particular year. And with the CSO project and with the water main replacement, we certainly added on a lot of debt. So we have to prioritize our projects at what we're able to afford and what the residents can afford. And as you know, it's been a pretty big challenge.
Sounds like a plan.
And making every effort to tee yourself up for any program that you can potentially tee yourself up for.
You said at the beginning this, the governor had set aside $2.4 billion, right? Which I'm understanding covers other things.
Yes,
in
it
addition
does
to-
cover, yes,
Yeah.
covers other things, yep.
You have any idea what percentage of that $2.4 billion will be allocated to this program?
I don't know a specific percentage. I could probably figure that out. I could look into that and figure it out and let Paul and Terry and John know certainly. I do know, like, one of the other programs I mentioned was the Complete Streets program. There's programs through the Division of Conservation and Recreation that they're sending money to. But I know that they're planning on funding the MVP program consistently, 1 to 2 grant rounds a year, at least over the next 5 years. So, you know, if it's getting 10 million a year, so maybe 50 million, just a quick calculation over the next 5 years.
Is this 2.4 billion per year, or is it stretched out for a 10-year?
I think it's stretched out over a period of time. So it's not just for 1 year, it's stretched out over a period of time, sprinkled through a bunch of the different state agencies and state programs.
Okay. All right.
Yes. But, I mean, I think it's the governor's effort to really start to put some resources, to focus on a lot of the things that the Commonwealth is telling the cities and towns to focus on. And now they're putting some resources towards it.
Good. Thank you. Very
Any
good.
other questions from folks in the audience
I
this
do
evening?
need to say one thing. I'm Tori from the tree planting program. And I don't know if grants apply, but I'm gonna reiterate what Mary Ann Wardell said so many times, but it's more true than ever. The city actually needs a tree department. You know, I mean, we are a volunteer group and we do what we can, but the city actually needs a tree department. This is, you know, I thought I really should say this.
Didn't we have one, or it's
had
combined with what, parks and what have you?
It is, it's basically DCM with Liz McKinley, the contract arborist.
Yeah.
You know, it's more true now than ever, you know, it's breeding and it's important.
I think Liz mentioned too, there was a couple other larger cities in the state that had like
Somebody did a
specific
survey
staff,
of
right?
every
Like
single tree in
Springfield,
the
she
city.
mentioned.
Who did that?
Yeah.
They have 5 or
They did.
6 staff,
Yeah.
yep,
This will leave right here.
yep. And that was discussed at the workshop and that'll be in the report as well, that was specifically mentioned, thank you.
When's your next presentation or meeting with the public scheduled for?
Sure, did anyone have any other things they wanted to touch on quickly or questions or anything?
So there was one thing that I just wanted to say, as Mary said in the beginning of this presentation too, is this process is supposed to be community driven. So it was great at the workshop. We had businesses there. We had utilities, Liberty Utilities, and some other representatives there, and we had a lot of people from the community there. But anybody that watches this or anybody else that hears about the hazard mitigation plan, we had some press releases out there. Feel free, if there's stuff that you want to comment on or stuff that you want to send to us, feel free to email the sewer department. It's sewer@fallriverma.org. So anybody that wants to email in any information or questions or comments that they have on this presentation, they can feel free to.
Thank you. And so that's actually gets to my next thing right here, are the next steps. So I'll just leave you with the next steps for the evening. If you do have something else that you'd like to share, please contact me or Paul or John or Terry. So the next steps to wrap up this process before June 30th are conduct the 3 additional workshops with the Portuguese community and neighborhood groups. We're going to finalize the report and submit it to the state. Upon review of our community resiliency building report that details the workshop and the neighborhood outreach that we've done, Fall River hopefully will become certified and thereby a certified MVP community. The community will then, through Marcy and other resources of the city, be able to seek out and apply for funding grant opportunities. Again, I said there was one that was going to open for June 2019, if you're a certified community. But you can also, as Terry was just mentioning, seek out and continue to apply for funding opportunities through other grant programs. So CZM, the pre-disaster mitigation program, the flood mitigation program, those are FEMA programs, so continue to seek out other grant programs and apply for those. Fall River will be required to prepare an annual progress report on your MVP implementation progress. It's just a 2 or 3 page questionnaire. Doesn't take a lot of time to fill out, but the state is going to require an annual progress report be completed and submitted. And then again, just continuing to communicate with and engage the Fall River community in resiliency discussions and actions and future planning efforts and projects. So those are the next steps based on this process.
Yep. So just to answer your question, Ned, I'm planning on going to the Niagara neighborhoods next meeting. The Maplewood Association's next meeting, and then I'm also going to be scheduled for the South End Neighborhood Groups Association. So I believe one is the third Wednesday of the month. The May 20th I know is the Niagara, and I think the first Thursday in June is the South End. So that's when I'll be presenting at those. I'm also going to contact the 2 North End neighborhood associations, see if I can get on one of their agendas as well.
You need the Flint in order to, for the Portuguese mostly, for Carlos. Maplewood, I know we can accommodate you, whatever.
Yep.
Just tell me when you want to come.
Yep, excellent. And yeah, as I said, at those presentations, we will be making a Portuguese translator available for anybody who needs assistance, throughout the process. So, as we make our presentation. Again, it's trying to reach out to the community and get additional information from everybody so that we can complete the process.
Good job.
And then Paul, will the final report be posted on the Sewer Commission website probably once it's completed?
Yeah.
Okay, so folks can go there for the final summary of findings.
Yep, so currently we have the hazard mitigation plan posted up on the Sewer Commission's site, and we'll also have this final report.
Very
Are there
good.
any other questions? So with that, I just wanted to say thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to work with Fall River, Paul, Terry, John on this project, and I think it'll be a really great success once it's all wrapped up after the additional sessions that we're planning on having. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Appreciate
having
it.
me.
It's very good.
Question, do you have a version that you're going to present to the neighborhood association meetings?
So with the neighborhood association meetings, when we go there, it'll probably be very similar to this.
Okay, do you have that printed up?
Not yet.
Okay.
Is that something?
Well, that would be a great handout for the people so they can read
Oh, yes,
at
so
their
when we
leisure.
go to the
Yeah.
meeting, print it. Oh, yes, okay, yep, I'll
Okay.
make a note of that, we'll be happy to do
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Yes, okay,
Definitely.
thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight, too. Thank you very much. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of our agenda.
Good.
Thank you, guys.
See you,
Right.
Jan.
Very good.
Yep, nice seeing you.
Anybody have any questions or anything they want to? comments you want to make on this before we go on to the next?
No, you did an excellent job.
All right, item number 4, the Hyacinth Street Drainage Improvement Construction Contract Award.
So we received bids for the Hyacinth Street drainage project. We opened them on Thursday, April 11th. The low bidder was the CN Corp. Up on your board, you'll see on the TV, you'll see a portion of the Hyacinth Street drainage project. So this is what we refer to as Hyacinth Street North. This is in the Iris Street area.
Yeah.
So this is increased drainage that needs to go on Hyacinth Street, some additional drainage coming down Iris Street to go into the open lot
Yeah,
that we purchased in that area.
All right.
that the one with the cement stanchions are in the front?
Nope, so this is to the north more down Hyacinth Street. That's the
The
one that,
one you're referring to is next, so this is.
Hyacinth Street south.
We bought 2 lots, so this is near the Strollo's house.
Right here,
Yeah,
Lot right there.
these two
We
Okay.
houses.
purchased this lot, all of red is the proposed new, the
You
green
gotta
is the
pick up.
existing. And we'll get it through the new lot and out the back. The one you're referring to is Hyacinth Street South. It's here, that's the
Right,
other lot that
right.
we purchased, and all of this new drainage is proposed up to this point. And then Paul has an application to Mass DOT to do a phase 2 to get all of the drainage across the highway.
so is this contract for both?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so
Both
it-
projects, but not the.
Not the portion
Correct.
going up with the highway?
We need to
Correct.
get-
Because I
What's that,
understand that's,
24?
it's going to be pretty, it could be pretty invasive and,
Well, Paul's been working with Mass DOT because they're going to repave Route 24. So we're hoping and expecting to get their approval to do an open cut across the highway before they repave.
Right, so the design showed a 3x5 box culvert. We're gonna request that Mass DOT install that with our help possibly, so.
but if that, do you have any idea when they're going to repave 24?
This year.
Yeah, so from my understanding, it's slated on their schedule for fall of this year.
Oh, okay.
So it is,
So it's not something like 2 years down the road and it's going to, would bog down the...
no, we're looking, trying to work with them to get that in prior to their resurfacing project.
Okay, good.
So,
All right, good.
so
Yeah, that's the
something-
one, Terry, I was looking at.
Yeah, correct.
I get mixed up
That's
because
the
I
one
noticed
closer to
too.
Diamond, so it's referred to as the South Project, it's
Yeah.
closer to
Yeah,
Diamond.
it's the one that goes down the hill. All right, very good.
So
All right, so we
CN
have,
Corp.
we have a contract for,
Yep, so they were the low
900.
bidder, the amount of the bid was $948,900. We evaluated the bid, Wright Pearson, design engineer, evaluated the bid. The bid was underneath the estimate, which was good, but within line of the construction due in the area, so we recommend award.
have we had any experience with CN Corporation?
We have had experience with CN. They have done water main replacement projects for us in the past. They've also done the Meridian Street sewer force main, low pressure sewer force main, probably about 8 or 10 years ago.
2005, it was 2005, 2006.
Mr. Ty, you have any problems with these people? No? Okay, that's good.
It's a good company, good to
Yeah.
work with.
Very good to work with.
Where's this price?
All right, so, so we're finally getting started on that. I remember we've been talking about this, Terry, for
Years.
years.
Yeah, this
But
is,
but part of the key was the acquisition of land.
Yeah,
Being able to do it. That's one of the items that really slowed us
I
down.
remember. There was some hedging back and forth. Very good. I'm glad we're at that point. Okay, does anybody have any problems or questions with regard to the bid process and what we're trying to do here? If not, I'll entertain a motion to award the contract to CN Corporation for $948,900 to commence the Hyacinth Street Drainage Improvement Project.
Second?
Anybody want to make that bid?
Make a motion
Oh,
to,
sorry.
In a second? You second? All in favor? Aye?
aye.
Okay, takes us to item number 5, the Crestbrook Construction Change Order.
so as you know, we've been progressing with the Crestbrook Drainage Project. presented in front of you, you have change order for some additional work. The majority of this work was requested by us due to some unforeseen conditions and some difference from what we thought was out there on the site. The total of this change order is in the amount of $228,563.73. This is K.R. Resendes is the contractor that's performing the work out there. Some of the things that we added in additionally, so up on the screen you'll see an overview of the Crestbrook project. Upper right hand corner there, it starts in the President Ave Rotary. So the red lines are the new drain lines or swales that we're installing. On the outlet of the, over by the President Ave Rotary, there was a swale that runs there and goes all the way to underneath Route 24. So this is where the rotary is on your left-hand side, and this is where the new 48-inch diameter pipe comes out to do. That swale running there, this is a picture just recently of it, was pretty built up that whole entire length. So you'll see way in the foreground is green grassy area as well. So we had to go a lot further into the swale than we originally expected to make sure that this was able to flow well. This is the forebay area, right where that 48-inch pipe lets out. This will allow any sediment that comes out of there and increase the water quality that we discharge out into the swale area and over into the interceptor drain. So this is another portion of the change order that was on here. So this is right off of the edge of Easton Avenue. So Bush Pond, we're standing at Easton Avenue right now with Easton Avenue to our backs, looking towards the west, northwest. Way off in the trees, way in the background, is what was known as Bush Pond or Hebert Pond. So this is the outlet from Bush Pond or Hebert Pond. It comes down through the swale and enters our pipe right in the bottom corner, bottom right-hand corner of the picture there. You can see the head wall. So this swale, again, once we got into the project with the quantity, with the amount of water, once we evaluated everything, was determined that we really should clean this swale and fully reconstruct this. There were some high points that built up from sediment, from the original design to when we actually got out there for construction. So this
Plus
is.
there were large trees all the way back and lots of vegetation, and actually the neighbors asked us
Clean it up.
to get it cleaned up.
Good.
So
Yeah.
We agree.
That's good.
So this was a great addition to the project. Allows a lot better water flow from Bush Pond down to the new culvert to allow water to go out.
I mean, I live fairly close to that area, so every once in a while I'd walk down there and take a look at just what's progressing on the construction side. And I'm very impressed with how fast the grass has grown. I mean, everything looks so green.
Just
And
in the
and
past couple of weeks.
And it looks impressive, you know, when you take a look at what was there and how it started and everything else. And it looks good. It looks real good. But including, I was kind of skeptical about the area that goes off from the rotary down into what I think is like a wooded area and everything else. That's all grown and beautiful.
Yeah, that area from the rotary heading east, that stream route flows down to Highland Brook, interconnects with Highland Brook, then under Route 24 to the interceptor drain. And what Paul was talking about is as we took away all of the trees to get in and put in the head wall, the downstream sediment had built up pretty heavily, and that's one of the items in the change order, that to make the hydraulics work, we requested and authorized KR to pull out all of that sediment to make sure we have the proper hydraulic flow down to Highland Brook.
What's going on with New Boston Road right now is all part of this project, is it not?
Yeah, it's installation of a drain from Easton Avenue to Phillip Street. You know, that low point of Phillip Street
Right.
that floods. It looks like, I think, some other response over 50 to 100 years when there was flooding. Sometimes the city just added more catch basins, even though it was an overcapacity problem
Yeah.
for the pipe. And I think if you look at the intersection of Phillips and New Boston Road, that's what happened there. They just kept adding catch basins, which didn't solve the problem because the pipe volume capacity wasn't there. So the partial closure of New Boston Road right now is to extend that drain from Easton Avenue to Phillips. So all of that drainage will now go back into the new pipe at Easton Ave and should address the historic flooding at Phillips Street.
How much more are we gonna do with this project?
So we have that stretch on New Boston Road. That finishes up the majority of the large piping on the project. We have some small areas to go back and finish up, but then the other thing involved in the project is milling and overlaying the area of Easton Avenue, New Boston Road that we've affected, the pavement. So we still have that portion, some sidewalk and curbing work to finish up, fencing. I expect we'll probably be working right up until about the fall on this project.
Okay, so this is, what we got in front of us, basically our first change order, am I correct, for this
Yes.
project?
Correct.
Is there any other items that are in abeyance beyond this that you know of?
Yeah, so actually, we're going to bring it up in other business, but that was presented to you tonight. I'm going to be having contract summaries prepared for each contract that's underway, moving forward in the future for the board to be able to review, and it'll have a review of the contract status. So if you take a look at the one that says Ray Pierce, it'll give a view of the contractor, the construction management services, as well as the SRF loan. So it'll show the change order number 1 that's on there, which includes PCO 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then any potential future change orders that may be coming up. So there are a couple of things on the edge of the rotary. Once we removed all the trees and vegetation there, it really left that area barren. So we're looking to add some additional vegetation there for shielding of that area.
It looks like they've done a lot of work on the rotary already. I mean, they've already started planting flowers again. They've cleaned it up quite a bit.
Yeah, no, the rotary definitely looks good, and there's actually through one of the local planting groups, they're looking at doing hydrangeas actually occurred in that whole rotary. So
Yeah.
that's really going to look like a beautiful area.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that too, because
But down at the end of Wingold Street too, we've got plantings coming all along because the neighbors had a barrier of trees and bushes that we had to take down to do the work, so we'll be replanting all along that way to restore our barrier.
Yeah, so that's one of the expected future change orders. Some
Okay.
additional clearing on some other areas, so.
very good. Any of you gentlemen have any questions with this change order or problems with it?
No.
If not, I'll entertain a
Not on
motion to, how do you want to say this, to approve change order number 1 to the tune of approximately $235,000.
235.
It's
228.
228.
Is it 228?
228?
Yep.
I just saw in the summary, some of those numbers.
Oh, okay, all right, okay.
So
Right, Chad, front view.
228,563.73.
$228,563.
I'll make a motion.
I've been around, second that.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, none? Okay, so be it. All right, that takes us to the item number 6, Middle Street construction change order.
Okay.
To another change order.
So in front of you, you have proposed change order for the Middle Street construction project. This is in the amount of $182,685.03. The contractor on this project is KR Resendes. These are, as we go through these change orders, there are some credits for alterations in the project that were savings in the project that the contractor recommended. We evaluated and accepted those, and there are also some additional things that we requested. We ran into some issues with the water main and sewer services down at the bottom of Middle Street at Bay Street, which we had to deal with. There was an illicit discharge, which is good that we found and corrected now. Bad that it was there in the first place. So we corrected that issue. There was some additional catch basin lateral connections that we had to deal with because of the elevations of where the catch basins came out to be tied into the main sewer. So in that change order. We've evaluated it, everything on there is within what we've approved and recommended.
How much more we think we gotta go on this project? Because it looks like they're ready to plant trees and so forth on Middle Street. I went by it today and, you
Yeah,
know, I think they've come a long way considering from what I remember the last time.
These are the catch basin tree boxes we're putting in, the new green infrastructure. The tree isn't installed yet, but the water goes in, feeds the tree.
I saw those.
Goes to the drain.
They got my attention. I thought it was pretty
Lower
cool.
Middle Street, the trees are being delivered today and being planted today down all along the parkway.
yep.
Was that going on the Park Road and Middle Street in the middle?
This is the
Right on
lowest
sidewalks.
section, so it's in the park, right off Middle Street.
Right, so this is in between Broadway and Bay Street.
Oh, okay,
These-
down the
these
back end.
pictures, right.
Yeah, where they have the, down the minute.
Yep, but in between Broadway and South Main, that median strip that's in between Park Drive and Middle Street, that's what's gonna be called vegetated bioswale.
Right.
So that's what it was designed as, that's what they're constructing it as. That'll have different types of grasses and different types of vegetation in there to actually be able to treat the water prior to it entering our sewer
Is that gonna
system.
be restricted to no parking?
So there, on Middle Street, so there's two streets there. There's
Right.
Middle Street
And a
that
park.
has two-way traffic. When the project's completed, that will have parking as it did on both sides of the street,
And Middle Street?
on Middle Street.
Yeah.
So if you go on Park Drive, which is the one way that you enter over next to Bradford Ave from South Main Street, and kind of follows a park, you take the right hand, brings you down to Broadway. That will have, so that only legally had parking on the north side of the street, on the park side of the street. All the cars that were parked on the median side of the street were actually illegally parked. That wasn't parking on that
And they
side.
destroyed and eroded all of the grass.
Right,
The cars
right.
just destroyed it all the way
Correct.
down.
That's true. That's the reason why I asked that question.
So with the redesign and the construction that we're doing, we're actually turning that into diagonal parking. So cars will be able to come down the one way and diagonally park towards the park. So it actually increases the legal amount of spots in that area. So there'll actually be more parking in that section of Middle Street
More
and Park
legal
Drive.
parking.
Yeah.
More legal parking,
Yeah.
yes.
So basically, it's only parking on one side of the street, not
And
both
the-
sides.
yeah,
On
On Park Drive.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah, just the
And,
north
and
side.
when it turns the corner, goes down,
That's what's gonna
parallels middle,
be the park.
is it still gonna be diagonal parking on?
Well, that's the only section that we're gonna be doing is
worried
that
about.
section right where you turn the
Yeah,
corner
those are
that
on-
parallels
on-
middle.
on-
That'll be the section that'll be all diagonal
The
parking.
Okay,
section- The section parallel to South Main Street, we didn't touch, we're not changing.
No,
Okay.
but
Right,
we're not going
correct.
that way.
Right from South Main down to Broadway is where we're making the adjustments.
Yes.
Seeing we're on that subject, I have a question. Who's responsible, maybe it's not us, the asphalt, the reconstruction of South Main Street in that area up to Oliver Street and up alongside?
Osborne.
So we'll be doing, we're gonna be doing reconstruction in that section. So currently we have mill and overlay for the section on South Main Street from Middle Street up to Osborne Street. We'll be going curb to curb, milling and overlaying that whole entire
Okay,
section.
because it's a mess.
Yeah, no, it is a mess, and we're gonna be going in, repairing that asphalt in that section. We'll be repairing the sidewalks. We're also, through the project, since we affected Middle Street coming all the way up, we'll be doing milling and overlaying from Bay Street up to Broadway, full depth reclamation of the street from Broadway up to Forest Street, and then milling all the way up to Ridge.
Ridge.
Yeah, up to Ridge
Ridge or
Street.
Whipple?
Whipple, excuse me, yeah,
Yeah,
up to
it's
Whipple.
Whipple.
Right, and we'll be doing some curbing and sidewalks, updating the corners to make them ADA compliant for the wheelchair ramps
Yeah,
in
good.
that whole
Okay,
section.
thank you.
Yeah, it's quite a project,
Yes.
quite the project. So KR has got Crestbrook and Millwood.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have both projects, they've been good to work with on both projects, so.
Okay,
what was the sewer service conflict with 795? There is no more 795 per se as a building, but That's the old address for the hospital itself.
Correct. So that was where a sewer service came out of the building.
From the original.
Right, from the original, it came out from the chapel area. There was a
Correct.
sewer service that came out. The sewer service on the plans, the elevations got a little weird. We couldn't tell exactly when they were in the planning phase how that sewer directly connected into the sewer in the street. We thought that it came out, dropped down, and went low. It actually came out high and then dropped down on top of the sewer main. So if that sewer was left in the actual location it was, it would have ran right through our drain line. So we had to put in a drop manhole in the sidewalk, drop down about 3 feet inside that drop manhole, and then bring the sewer line underneath the drain line to tie into the main sewer.
Okay, thank you.
Isn't there a drop shaft at Middle,
Middle
And-
Broadway.
yeah, Middle and Broadway? When I went by, I tell you, none of this has affected that, right?
Yeah.
It's all well below, okay.
So that's one of the things that we actually had to work around. So actually, when you come up to Broadway, we had to head towards the north a little bit to that corner and then come back towards the median.
And actually, as the contractor was putting the drain in that section, coming across Middle, he ran into some of the sheeting that the contractor had left in place in 2005 when he did the drop shafts, and
Yeah.
he just cut that out.
Good. Okay, anybody have any questions with regard to this change order?
I have one question on
Go ahead.
item number 8, sinkhole repair,
Yep.
the unstable subsurface condition.
Yep.
Did the contractor create that when he was excavating in the area? Did you cause the sinkhole afterwards?
No, that was my initial thought too as well. I was actually out on site that morning, and that was off to the side of the median area, and it really encompassed an area under the street. It was an area, so it was next to the median area in between Park Drive and Middle Street, but towards the Middle Street side. When we came up through that area, we actually hit some questionable material, and we ended up using imported gravel as backfill for the actual area. But once we got in there, my initial thought when I saw the sinkhole was it could have been probably caused by the contractor. Once we started to excavate down, you could see the straight line where the gravel was and, where the virgin fill was on the side, and it just ended up settling. It was pretty muddy, pretty organic material that shouldn't have been there, so.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve change order number 1 to the tune of $182,685.03 for the Middle Street Drainage Improvement Project.
Make a motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Takes us to President Avenue, CMRI.
So, as you know, we are going out to bid, we went out to bid for the President Ave pump station replacement. This is the CMRI Construction Management Resident Inspection contract for that project. So this is Wright Pierce Engineering is the company that we're looking to award to. The amount of the contract is for a total of $570,000. That includes all of the construction phase services, so the administrative end, the resident inspection on site, and then any of the construction phase closeout that's required. They deal with managing the SRF and preparing our reimbursements, evaluating all of our pay recs throughout the whole entire project, providing us with full on-site inspection for the project while needed. So typically, we usually say if the contractor's out there, we would like to have our engineer rep out there, especially if there's going to be any major construction going on. So I've reviewed the contract and it falls in line within our standards that we pay for this. So I'm happy after my review of this contract.
Did this go out to bid?
So this is exempt from bidding, these requirements, so this didn't go out to bid, no. Through our original, so this is an amendment to an original contract that we have
So routinely, we do an RFQ process periodically and select engineers for projects, and if they do a good job, we keep them on that particular project. So through the RFQ process, we have selected Wright Pierce for a 2 pump station rehabs. This is the first one. We think they've done a good job on design and preparation of plans and specs. So we're just amending that contract to keep them on through the construction phase of the project.
Do we have any idea what this roughly what this project's gonna cost?
So the engineer estimate for the reconstruction of the President Ave pump station was $3.5 million. As I said, we received bids. We're still in the process of evaluating those bids.
Okay.
Where's where is this located in?
So this pump station is on President Ave towards the east end next to the Rotary.
Take a look at the screen.
Yep.
So
Right
this is
behind the
existing pump
right
station.
behind the Newport
This
Creamery.
is McDonald's, Newport Creamery, the Rotary is
Mhm.
over here.
Yeah,
This pump station was built in 1969, horrible
it's in that
condition.
parking lot?
We're gonna relocate it to this area behind Newport Creamery. The existing is in
Mhm.
that parking lot.
Okay, no, that's right near the pole. Okay, I know it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so if you're
thank
going
you.
to People's Liquors, you park right up
Yeah,
there and
yeah,
you
right
walk
up against.
across the way. Pump station's in horrible condition, and it's been in the way for parking for that plaza for many years. I believe in 1969, when it was built, McDonald's wasn't there, the extension, Newport Creamery wasn't there yet, so it was kind of isolated, but it's been built around. So we've always talked with the owner's rep that when we get to replacing the station, we would move it so this area could become parking. And so we're moving it to the back behind Newport Creamery. And so here's Newport Creamery, here's the pump station, here's the generator. So this area where the pump station is now will be reverted to parking for the plaza.
That's not the reason why we're moving it though, is it?
That's one of the reasons, yes.
So we're not moving it because we're not building a new pump station to move it. The old pump station is out of date. It was built originally in 1969. There was an issue that made the dry well unusable in the 80s. There was a temporary submersible pumps put in there in the 80s that was supposed to be Band-Aid to hold over till a new station was built in the near future. That's what they said in 1984.
Is that gonna eventually tie into what we've just done over here at the Rotary? Or how far
No.
is it away?
Rotary is drainage, this is sewage.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
But a couple of things is, one, the pump station had to be replaced, that's our worst one out of our 15. The staff, our maintenance staff of Veolia needs to be commended for keeping that pump station running. What Paul was alluding to is it was built in 1969. In 1981, it completely failed. The old dry pit station got flooded, the equipment was destroyed. So the solution was to put in submersible pumps into the wet well as a temporary solution in 1981. We're still on that temporary solution. This station is in horrible condition, so it had to be replaced. One of the advantages to us by moving it is during construction, we don't have to bypass. The old
Yeah.
station will run the whole way through, except for the very short term when we're ready to put this online. So there are some advantages to us. There is an advantage to the plaza owner, and they've been cooperative with us, getting new easements, so I think it's a win-win for both parties.
Okay, thanks.
And you gentlemen feel comfortable that these people will, for $570,000, perform what's necessary?
Yeah, right.
Yes, they've done a good job. They did the construction management and the resident engineering on the Globe Four Corners sewer project that
Yeah, I
we did.
remember.
Did a very, very good job.
Yeah, they're also doing the Crestbrook, which we've been very happy with them out there. Their on-site reps that they've had have been excellent as well, and I think that really helps the project when you have a good on-site inspector.
Okay, when do we plan on starting this project? I know we're going out to bid and
We
we've
have to
got to
have a signed
evaluate the bids that have
contract
come
by
in. Excuse me?
We have to have a signed contract by June 30th to meet our funding source.
By when?
June 30th.
Oh, June 30th.
And the bids are starting to flow in.
The bids have come in, we're evaluating that, reviewing the bids that are in, and at the next meeting in May, we'll have a recommendation to award to you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I remember the name right, Pierce. I think they've been online with us for what, at least 2 years? 3 years?
More than
About
that.
4.
Both water and sewer, they've done several jobs for us.
Yeah, okay.
They've done a good job.
All right. Anybody have any questions with respect to
Yeah.
this? Comments?
Sounds
they
like a
wanna make?
plan.
All right, so, will anybody make a motion to award the design contract?
Make a motion to design the design contract, $570,000 for the President Avenue reconstruction and relocation of,
Just one comment, instead of design, it's the
Design.
construction management, resident engineering.
Yep,
So it's not design, it's CMRI.
right.
It doesn't include design?
We've already done
Or
this.
design.
It's already done that part, okay. Very good. All right, so, anybody want to second that?
Second.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Very good. Next item.
Item number 8, contract for wastewater treatment facility, CMRI. I request that matter be tabled to the next meeting. I'm just trying to work with CD and Smith to finalize that contract before I present it to the board.
All right, so, you want to move on?
I just need a motion to table.
Okay. Big motion to table, anybody make that motion?
Make a motion.
Anybody second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, takes it to Bicentennial Park, AUL. And this I found quite interesting. I didn't know something like this was on the docket in any place. When I understand it, we're talking here about not being able to do certain things above ground, where we had some remediation done down on the bottom of President Avenue. Am I right?
So when we constructed the CSO screening and disinfection facility in Bicentennial Park, and we excavated through our project, we found low-level contaminants in the soil, not caused by us, pre-existing there. So through construction, we disposed of a lot of it, we treated some of it, all in accordance with state law. But because there are contaminants below us in that work zone, currently we're paying about $4,500 a year to the state for reporting requirements on the soil quality, and to be able to close out our part is a requirement to get this notice of activity and use limitation due to the soil. So it doesn't stop anybody from doing anything in the park on the surface. The restrictions are primarily associated with excavating down. If somebody's gonna excavate down in that zone, there are items that they have to follow. You can't just do it like in a virgin soil, just dig at will. Because of the known low-level contaminants there's a process they have to follow. So this has been sent to the law department and to DCM. If you approve it tonight, it'll be referred over to DCM, the park board, for their approval as well. It's simply a requirement of the state law.
A lot of paperwork to go with it, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, this,
Are there any wells dug in those areas where the state or some type of environmental person comes in and checks every once in a while to see if what's down there hasn't got any worse or whatever?
so there's no permanent monitoring wells that we set up in that particular location. There was additional borings that we did to find the extent of the contamination within the area that we worked.
Yeah.
But there's no long-term permanent monitoring wells.
So you just need an approval from
I
us?
need this board approval because it was our project, then I'll be forwarding it again back to the law department. We've sent it to once, and over to DCN and the park board for their approval as well.
All right,
I have
so, anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Yep.
So the top couple feet, 3 feet is all good
Correct. So,
loom,
yep.
and below that is the material that's impacted. Is there a demarcation barrier in there?
There-
So when you go to excavate and you get down 3 feet, it's usually like an orange barrier, like similar to a filter fabric. Yet somebody would say, "Oh wait, what's going on here?"
Yeah, there wasn't anything required for us with
Okay.
the contaminants that we found within this area to put anything like that. So there isn't anything that was done on this project. No.
Good idea.
Will this impact the wall that they want to put in down there?
No, that's outside of this zone.
Outside of the zone?
So the zone
Right.
is essentially restricted to what our work zone is, the walls going.
Way down, ain't it?
To the west of that.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
so this AUL is restricted to the area where we worked. We worked in that area and we were able to bound off the particular area that we worked. We did borings within those particular areas. On the extent, by law, we weren't required to extend out or do AUL in that
The
additional area.
demarcation of that zone by map and by bounds is clearly marked in here, exactly where it is, which is that area where we worked. We really didn't go to the west of that with excavation. We're right in this
Okay.
area.
So it's pretty much where the building is, the drive area.
Yeah,
Okay.
the stuff we done.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Okay, any other questions? If not, how do you wanna, how do you want us to say this?
Motion to approve the AUL for Bicentennial Park as submitted.
Okay, as stated by Mr. Sullivan in this particular case here, anybody wanna make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Terry. All right, that takes us to engineering design contract amendment for the William Canning Boulevard.
So before you, you have an amendment to an engineering design contract for Gordon Archibald, Inc. They've been working with the engineering department on designing some of the drainage over in the William S. Canning Boulevard. So William S. Canning Boulevard pretty much goes from Newton Street up to Tucker Street. The city's been given to Tucker Street to Newton Street.
Oh, yeah, Newton up there.
Yep. Yeah, Plymouth Ave turns
Right,
into
right,
Rhode
yeah,
Island
right,
Ave,
then
it
it
turns
becomes-
into William S.
right.
Canning Boulevard. So it's a weird set of streets there, but it's the same street. But, so engineering was issued a Mass Works grant to be able to redo the street within that area. They've been under design to redo that street. We have some flooding issues up on the screen. You'll see one of them right in front of the Fall River Ford area. CVS is actually right behind you from where this picture was taken.
You wanna do this before they do this reconstruction on the road?
Yeah, we want to try to get in there and do the drainage project with them, in parallel with them.
Right,
To
okay.
redo the street.
Cause that's coming up pretty fast.
Correct, they're looking to get construction done. So this amendment is for some additional surveying and mapping that were required. What we're looking at is doing separated drainage from this low point heading north on William S. Canning Boulevard up to Tucker Street. So we're looking at a three-phase process right now to do some additional drainage and some storage on William S. Canning Boulevard, with the potential of running a separate drain line to the north up to Tucker Street and putting it back into the sewer at that point. Another phase within the project, which we expect to come later on just because of higher cost impacts, would be a new drain line running all the way down Tucker Street to Laurel Street, heading south on Laurel Street, and then from there out to Cook Pond. That's gonna require a lot deeper excavation, a lot higher construction costs. and that's outside of the limits of what they're doing on William S. Canning Boulevard. But as always, we would like to be able to investigate those areas and come up with a good design basis, so when we do that next phase, we don't run into issues. So that's where some of the additional surveying, mapping came in, was getting additional surveying, mapping going down Tucker Street, south on Laurel Street, and then out by the housing complex there. There's some additional geotechnical, so we wanted to do some additional borings and some additional test pits, which our water department staff is assisting with doing the test pits. So the total amount of this amendment, $63,298.76. This was through engineering. Again, they're overseeing the project. They come to us with any of their findings through this, and we approve any of it. So,
What was the original amount of this is in addition to it, right?
yeah,
So what's the original amount?
I believe it was about 82,000, the original of the contract, and that was for the design of just the original drainage. So there is,
So it's an appreciable more amount of work that has to be done.
yeah, this is including, so originally we thought we would be able to fix the drainage problem just within that William Canning section, and be able to divert it off in separate drains that were already there. But now we're looking at having to, we were looking at possibly going down Newton Street. Newton Street was determined not to be a possibility just because of elevations and the way that the drainage works over there and different utilities. So we had to look at this alternate route down Tucker and Laurel.
Okay. Any questions?
One question.
Yes.
Does this tie into where we bought the property, the dental building property between the gas station and the Audi Volkswagen dealership?
Behind Aspen Dental, I think.
Aspen Dental, yeah.
So behind Aspen Dental, that was, that area directly won't be affected by that. That was a drainage improvement that went from that back low-lying area out onto
A lot.
Lawton Street, yeah,
Right. So.
near the the storage guy.
Yeah, but that's a low-lying area within just that isolated spot. So the drainage now will go from that low-lying area behind Aspen Dental along the back of the Seasons area out onto Lawton Street. At Lawton Street, it'll come into this separate drainage.
Okay, so it does tie
Yeah,
back into
yeah, it does
okay,
tie back
okay.
into it. Doesn't go to that direct spot, but it ties
Okay.
back into it.
Any other questions?
No.
If not, I'll entertain a motion to amend the engineering design contract to the tune of $63,298.76. Anybody want to make that motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
Accept that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So be it. That takes us to
Scott.
number 11. The Wooded and Curran Scatter and Control Review Contract.
SCADA.
SCADA.
That's
SCADA.
good.
So this is work order number 6 within a project that they've been working on. So Wood and Curran, we've been having oversee SCADA system in the wastewater treatment system. So up on the screen you'll see a picture of what the updated SCADA system, which essentially is the computer system that helps us run our plants and monitor all of our data that comes into our facilities. The one at the wastewater treatment facility has been old and dated. Woodward and Curran is working currently to update that system. What you have in front of you is an agreement for them to do additional design and oversight on the large contract number 1 that's going out to bid down at the wastewater treatment plant. So within that contract, there's multiple SCADA panels that are going to be going in, so we're going to be able to get a lot more data back on SCADA. So there'll be new panels within the new control room, temporary / permanent control room, long-term temporary control room that we're going to be having. There'll be additional SCADA modules and panels within the generator, within the power monitoring for the new electrical service that's coming into the building, all coming from the new compressor that we're putting in the PSA. So all that stuff has to get tied back in. Through my experience, I've found that it's very good to have one company, even though we have CDM, which is a very capable company, and some other companies, but I've found it beneficial so far through this process to have one company, and we've chosen Woodward and Curran to oversee just the SCADA. The SCADA is how all of these plant upgrades and everything interacts with our staff. So it's all about making it easy and usable for the end user, the guys at the plant, and being able to manage the plant. So this is a contract that kind of oversees the construction and bidding and the design and bidding of the contract one, just so it's another set of eyes on there to be able to make sure that it's easy for our guys to use.
Haven't this company done something
Yeah.
for us before?
Yeah, so
We've
they did.
used them before.
Right, so they did a SCADA, they started out, they did a SCADA evaluation for the sewer system, so they went out and they evaluated all of our SCADA systems
okay.
throughout the whole
That's
entire
what I
system. We're currently working on full updates of the SCADA system with them, going to full radio throughout the system with them.
Yeah, it's gonna be quite the project when it's
Yeah,
done.
correct,
Right.
we've been happy. The contract amount, this is a not to exceed of $20,000, and I said this is a work order change to their original contract number 6.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this? No? So will someone entertain a motion to award the amount of $20,000 to Woodward and Curran?
Yes.
Make a motion. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, that takes us to item number 12, fiscal year budget and rates.
So I've provided to you the proposed budget for FY '20 at $23,939,841, with a proposed sewer rate of $5.48 per CCF. That's a 10-cent increase from the current rate of $5.38. A 10-cent increase to the average family using 109 gallons per day equals $5.30 per year of an increase in that bill. Tonight we'll be proposing a similar rate increase to the water board of 10 cents with the same impact of $5.30. So the total impact, if both the water and sewer boards approve, would be $10.60 per year to the average family, or 88 cents a month. To be able to keep that rate increase so minimal is we've utilized our free cash to offset most of the increases have to do with debt. And so within the sewer budget, we've utilized over $1 million of available free cash.
1.22.
1.225 within the revenue budget to minimize the rate increase. In addition, we are planning to continue our stabilization fund build-up. So currently, the sewer stabilization fund is $400,000 out of the free cash, not the free cash used here, but we're also planning to transfer $100,000, as we've done every year for the past 4 years, to get it to $500,000. So I think the rate increase is modest. The budget is sufficient for what we need to do. The primary increases with debt and the annual increase to our contract operator, Veolia, which is a fixed cost 10-year contract we have with them.
The 225 is a great thing for us this year. But, Mr. Sullivan, let me ask you, where's the majority of that come from?
The majority of that comes from two sources. One is staying within our budget and not spending up to the maximum of our budget. We try to save wherever we can. But a big source of that normally comes from debt. We have to prepare for debt issuance each year. Most of our debt goes through the Mass Clean Water Trust, which is the state organization that gives us the SRF loans. Normally, we start off with a short-term interim loan, and then we plan for the long-term loan to go into place. We don't know the exact date when the new loans are going into place, but we have to plan for them.
Right.
In some years, like this past year, some of the startup of that long-term debt by the state gets bounced into next year. So that unused debt money is the bulk of where the free cash comes from. So when the state goes out for the long-term loans, it's just not us. They put out a pool, usually of $40 to $50 million worth of loans, taking a number of communities together to bond, go to Wall Street and get good bonding rates. If we're expecting, let's say, to go in March, this past March, and they bounce that over to July or August, that bounces from fiscal year to fiscal year. That means that money we had anticipated to go into long-term debt in March didn't get spent. That's where the bulk of the free cash comes from. But we can't guess that it's not going to happen and not budget for it, because if it did, then we'd go into deficit spending,
Yeah.
which we
Yeah.
can't do.
Yeah, it definitely came in handy this year, no doubt about it. One other thing, what year are we in with Viola's contract?
They go out to 2024, so it's 2014 to 2024, so about the 5th year.
Okay,
And we've been very happy with their service.
all right, very good. I think you people ought to be commended for the work you guys did in keeping the budget in line and so forth.
And as you know, in the Veolia contract, that 10-year contract has a fixed cost every year that they have to maintain. And that came in as a bid. And usually there's about a 3% increase that was in that fixed bid from 2014. And that reflects as one of the increases that was fixed in their contract that we build in. The good thing about that is it gives us some stabilization of cost over a longer time.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you said it goes to 2024?
Twice.
Okay. All right, so we got a little while on that. Very good. The stabilization fund doesn't show in the budget, does it? Okay. Very good. So,
So the
do you need a...
stabilization fund is essentially a set-aside fund that, as you recall, I had met with you, I had met with the city council, because there were concerns about emergencies. And so I had proposed we would put $100,000 a year for 10 years to get up to $1 million. This year will get us to $500,000, so we're continuing on that plan. That's a set-aside fund that can be used with approval by you or the city council. The general concept on that fund is if there's a major emergency that wasn't set in the operational budget, then we have a funding source to go to for that emergency. But the hope is to build that fund up to $1 million and let it sit there, hopefully not to have an emergency, but having a rainy day fund if that doesn't occur.
Yeah, the overall recommendation is to have 10% of the budget in the stabilization. That's a recommendation.
Can, on free cash, once we know it's free, what the figure is from the state, are we obligated to put it all in to the budget?
No.
So there's a percentage we could hold back that would also go into the stabilization fund, is that what you're
You
saying?
could, yes. The only restriction on free cash per ordinance is that it cannot exceed 25% of the operational budget. If it does, the excess has to be used to reduce the rates.
Got it. Okay. All right, so you need an approval tonight for the budget to the amount of $23,939, whatever. And for the proposed rates.
41, and for the proposed rate, the $5.48 is the rate that affects 99% of the residential and commercial customers. As every year you see in the ordinance proposal is a rate for significant industrial users, which is only 18 or 19 customers. That rate, per the ordinance proposal, is proposed to increase from $2.53 to $2.58 per CCF. And then there are about 15 customers that have sewer but not water, so they don't have a water meter. Those are listed in subsection 4 by per capita number of people in the household, and I increased that by the same percentage that I increased this by.
Okay. All right, so you need us to approve the proposed rates that are part of the budget.
As in the ordinance attached.
Okay. All right, does any gentlemen have any questions or
No.
comments you want to make about this? If
Nope.
not,
One at a time.
I'll entertain a motion, first of all, to approve the budget, the proposed budget at $23,939,841. Did I
Second.
say that right? $23,939,841.
Yes.
We want to make that motion.
Motion.
Second. All in favor? Aye. I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed rates as listed in the budget,
It's listed in the attached ordinance.
in the attached ordinance. Okay. Anybody want to make that motion?
Make a motion.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. That takes us to other business. Are there any other business? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, yes, sir. Can I have your name?
My name is Rick Gonzalo. I have a house on 6 Family.
You're in the next meeting
Next
at
to be- next
7:30.
meeting.
This is
Yeah.
still commission.
Oh, okay.
So-
Okay.
Next.
When I saw all you guys in there, I thought I was late.
No, no,
So
yeah.
They
this is
did tell
af-
me 7:30.
Yeah.
I'm
This
sorry.
was after the fact.
In about 15 minutes, you'll have the opportunity.
But,
So-
I'm early then.
All right, no problem.
So just again, under other business, the only other thing is the project summaries. There was 2 that was included in your project. I expect on the next agenda, I'm gonna have a second, separate line item, just as contract updates, but for the 2 projects we have going on. One CDM Smith, which is the Middle Street Drainage Project, just shows the change orders that have been done on the contract, any potential upcoming change orders. And then there's also one included for the Pressburg project. So just, this format's the one that I'm planning on using moving forward.
Very good.
So just wanted to present those to you, and you'll
Very
be
good.
seeing them in your packets coming forward.
Do we have anything we have to sign tonight?
Yes, there is some stuff among them.
I'm sure.
Very good.
So,
All right.
I'd like to
Thank you very
adjourn.
much. Appreciate that.
Still need a motion to adjourn.
Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.